The protagonist was climbing a mountain, deceived by his editor who said he needed experience to improve the quality of his story. While plotting revenge against his editor, the iron bar he was leaning on broke, and he fell from the mountain. At that moment, he realized that instead of daydreaming about his book, he should have paid more attention to his surroundings. When he woke up due to the immense pain in his body, he found his hands tied for some reason, and in front of him was a beautiful girl drooling while looking at him. She began saying in a strange language that he had very tender meat, which would become very fatty if roasted. Hearing this, the protagonist panicked. But if it were any of my subscribers in his place, they would be excited in such a situation. Just when he thought this would be his end, the cat-like girl cut the rope tying his arms and said that even though she was hungry, she couldn't eat people. Looking closer at her appearance, the protagonist noticed that she had animal ears and also a tail. At that moment, he finally realized that he had been sent to another world. But his way of getting there was a bit different from the norm since he wasn't hit by the truck sama. Looking around, he was surprised to find that this place seemed to be from the time of cavemen. Peering out of the cabin, he saw several humanoid beings with animal appearances. With all this information, he realized he had been sent to a world where society was primitive. At the same time, the girl's father, who was the village chief, appeared and asked why he was in their village. Guys, I forgot to mention, but the protagonist still doesn't understand their language, so he has no idea what they're saying in front of him. Because of his slender and delicate appearance, along with the fact that the wizard wanted to see this boy, the village chief began to think that the protagonist was from a great village. As he headed towards the wizard, the people of that village were surprised by the fact that he had no horns or wings. Man, I understand their surprise. Nowadays, almost everyone has grown a pair of horns. Feeling their curious gazes, he noticed there was no desire to devour his flesh, so they must not be a tribe of cannibals. And since they let him sleep, they must not intend to harm him. Meanwhile, cut to another scene where the strongest warriors of the village are saying that they need to find a new wizard soon, but they don't know what to do since everyone in the tribe has been tested, and none of them had magical talents. The only one left to be tested is the exile they found 3 days ago, and since they had nothing to lose, they asked to bring the outsider. Upon entering the tent, the protagonist noticed that the old man was the leader of this tribe. As the old man seemed quite weak, he decided that if things got ugly, he would take the old man hostage. But when he looked into the elder's eyes, he felt as if his soul had left his body. In this strange dimension, a fire dragon appeared in front of him, along with the old man, who explained that this place was inside the protagonist's soul, and the reason he now understood their language, as he had transmitted his tribe's language directly into his soul. After opening his eyes, the elder said he would become part of this village as the new wizard. The news of the protagonist being the new village mage spread quickly, and upon hearing this news, all the villagers were happy, as they would no longer be treated as outcasts. At the same time, the girl Yanhua said that from now on, she would take care of him, explaining that her tribe is called Yanlong, and the strongest in the tribe is the wizard, with her father being the chief of the village, the second in command. But if a race has no wizard, it definitely be destroyed, followed by the hunting captain. And there are also soldiers with tattoos, and reserve soldiers and commoners. And formerly they all lived in a fertile ancestral land, where they didn't need to worry about water and meat. They were a strong tribe of 300 people, with 65 soldiers in a single hunting group. But half a year ago, they became targets of the Black Cobra tribe. And as a result, many people were killed, and even their ancestral lands were taken. And they were forced to migrate to this desert place. Because of this, their goal is to become stronger to rescue their captured companions and reclaim the ancestral land. Then, as the protagonist walked through the village, he noticed that most people are pale and thin. They are clearly malnourished. The living environment is very poor, and the bad hygiene conditions make it easy to get contaminated with bacteria. So if an outbreak of contagious diseases were to occur, it would be an absolute disaster. And as he became desperate imagining such a scene, he heard a robotic voice in his head saying that the daily aid system had been activated, and if he checks in daily, he will receive a random newbie aid package, and more aid packages will be unlocked 1 year after the system activation. Of course, if he waited a year, they would all die. And interrupting his thoughts, Yanhua said she will take him to rest. So as he entered the cabin that would be his new home, he lay down on the bed to take a nap. Then out of nowhere, he smelled milk coming from the bed, and suddenly Yanhua jumped towards him and told him to stop smelling her bed. And that's when he realized they would be living together. Guys, this protag is one of mine. He ignored the fact that she had horns and animal ears, since she had a beautiful face and body, of course. Seeing him analyzing her appearance and saying that he accepts to live with her, Yanhua became embarrassed and said she won't sleep in that cabin because that night she will be patrolling. And shortly after her departure, The protag opened the system and made his first check-in and received an intermediate assistance package. And with this package, he obtained the healing ability level 1. And the reason he received an intermediate assistance package was not something forced, since this system said it always gives a bonus on the user's first check-in. And as he uses his healing ability, its level increases. And looking at his status, he realized that with his current status, it wouldn't be enough to survive in this primitive tribe. So he regretted not training his body before dying. Guys, be careful with your physical condition, because you might end up in a survival isekai, all sedentary. At the same time, cut to another scene where it shows the elder saying that even though the protag's origin is unknown, he must become the new sorcerer of the tribe. And the reason for the old man's haste is that his body will only endure surviving for a few more days. And seeing the moribund state of the elder, the village chief became frustrated for being so weak, since the sorcerer hurt himself so much to protect his tribe from the Black Cobra race. And understanding his feelings, the elder said he doesn't need to worry about that. Instead, he should perform the succession ceremony in the next 3 days. And he also doesn't need to worry about the boy being a spy from the Black Cobra tribe, since they wouldn't be able to raise a child so clean and with smooth skin. Besides, he has observed the soul of that boy, and there is no malice in him. His soul is clean like a river with no trace of dirt, and seems to be part of a legendary tribe. So when the chief was going to make the inheritance preparations, the elder stopped him, and said that the descendants of a sorcerer often have extraordinary talent, so it would be better if their tribe had many generations of sorcerers. In short, the old man was telling the protag to have as many descendants as possible. Then when the master of the village was leaving the elder's hut, he saw his daughter trying to eavesdrop on their conversations, and as she was caught red-handed, she had no choice but to come up with a random excuse. But he didn't mind, and told her to marry the young sorcerer and have many children. Upon hearing this shocking news, her brain shut off for a few seconds, and when it returned to normal, she said she had already stated before that she would only marry someone who could defeat her. So there's no way she could marry such a sedentary guy. Hey guys, you have to exercise. Otherwise, when you go to another world, you'll lose a beautiful wife for being sedentary. Of course, the reason she hasn't married yet is that since she's very strong-willed, no one has been able to defeat her in a duel. And as she's already 19, Yanhua's father told her to have a good time with the protagonist soon, and have several children. Man, I wish I had a father-in-law like that. Since usually if a father sees some kid approaching his daughter, he chases the boy with a machete in hand. And as Yanhua wanted to be an empowered woman, she said that instead of having children, she wants to become stronger to seek revenge. So the next morning it shows the protagonist shivering from the cold, and looking closer at his new home, he saw that there were many holes. And because of that, he almost froze to death during the night. And as he closed the holes, Yanhua appeared and began to imagine them having 3 children, and embarrassed, she slapped him several times, of course, as the protagonist was as sedentary as my subscribers. These slaps almost killed him, and the only thing the poor guy wanted was straw to cover the holes in his new home. And realizing this, Yanhua said she would help him, and while she went for the straw, the protagonist saw 2 little girls sleeping in the cold without a blanket. At the same time, Yanhua explained that most people don't have homes, and animal skin is very valuable, so they themselves have to hunt it if they want a blanket. Later, as he returned to his hut, the protagonist gave his straw to cover the girls, and seeing this, Yanhua said that as he is a sorcerer, he is much more important than them, so he cannot be frozen during the night. And the protagonist said that they are all equally important, of course. This speech made Yanhua even more interested in him. Later, as it was getting dark, the hunting squad returned from their mission. And with this news, all the villagers gathered to see the glorious return of the hunting squad, and were happy not to have to go hungry for a while. At that moment, while the protagonist saw all this, Yanhua explained that most of the meat is distributed to the tattooed warriors, and a small portion is given to the reserves and children, but women and the elderly can only eat occasionally. Usually they gather wild fruits to eat. And with this information, the protagonist had an idea, and asked if they had tried agriculture or raising animals to become a food source, since if they started to cultivate, they would stabilize the food reserves in the village. Of course, as a person from a primitive era, Yanhua did not understand the reason for taking care of animals when they do not have enough to eat. And while thinking of an easy way to explain this to her, the leader of the hunting squad congratulated the future village chief for finally finding a husband, but embarrassed, she denied it and said that the protagonist was the heir of the sorcerer. And upon hearing this, the guys from the hunting squad were happy and gave him some of their catches. And before he got the wrong idea, Manhwa said that they are only doing this because he is the future sorcerer. Even a little boy gave his only meal to the protagonist for being the future king of the village, but the protagonist only accepted the hunt from the hunter. So as it got dark, it shows Manhwa asking the protagonist why he didn't accept the meat from the little boy, since it is an honor for the boy to offer meat to the sorcerer. But the protagonist said he can't pride himself on taking a child's meal, and as he said that, he noticed that Manhwa was staring at his meat, and her belly wouldn't stop growling. But when he asked if she wanted to take a bite, she refused, saying she couldn't eat the wizard's heir's food, of course. She said that just for show, because the next moment, she couldn't resist her greed and said she would just take a little bite, but she ended up eating more than 80% of the meat. She did just like that friend of yours who, when you offer something to him out of kindness, ends up eating almost everything by himself. While eating the remaining, the protagonist felt the lack of a little salt to make the meat tastier. And realizing this, Manhwa offered the salt she was keeping, saying that since the day they lost their territory, it had been difficult to get salt, and the little they could get all went to the tattooed warriors. But even being a reserve, she managed to save a little salt from her old territory. Hearing this, the protagonist felt frustrated for forgetting that salt was very valuable in a primitive society, unlike the land where you could buy a packet in any supermarket. So he couldn't accept something so valuable. Because of that, he returned the salt to Manhwa, and while thinking of a way to lift this village out of poverty, Manhwa said that every 15 days, the leopard deer tribe opens a market, and people from nearby tribes go to them to buy many things, and one of those things is salt. And the next day they will open the market. It will be in 10 days, and hearing this, the protagonist decided to go take a look there when the time comes to learn more about this isekai. Folks, you know that dessert comes after dinner, but before he could taste the dessert, his father-in-law appeared and ruined his joy, saying that the wizard was calling him, and seeing his future son-in-law entering the hut, the village chief said that the remaining time of the great wizard would be handed over to the protagonist, and he wasn't the only one who realized that this day had finally come. The strongest warriors of the village also noticed this, and they were saddened by the departure of someone who was like a father to them, and at the same time they prepared to welcome the new wizard of their tribe. So it cuts to another scene where it shows the elder saying that as tomorrow will be the succession ceremony, he will tell everything the protagonist needs to know. So the old man explains that the wizard is the one who protects the tribe, inherits the future of the kingdom, and leads his people to glory. Only by doing all this can someone be worthy of being called a wizard, and in this world, the power of the tattoo is the basis of a race. The totems inherited by each tribe are also different. Only the wizard is capable of controlling the power of the tattoo and activating the totem mark in the blood of the warrior of his tribe. The tattoo soldiers are the strongest people of a race besides the wizard, and each of them has great potential because they all have a lot of blood ki. However, no matter how good a warrior's talent was, he wouldn't be able to evolve naturally if there wasn't a wizard to guide that power. So the presence of the wizards is very important for the warriors. In fact, everyone has the power of blood ki within their bodies. And with the help of a wizard, even the weakest person can become a tattoo warrior, folks. That means our protagonist is going to be overpowered, and he's going to make his kingdom strong too. And if a person accumulates enough blood strength, they will be promoted through the ritual. Under normal circumstances, a reserve soldier can deal with most beasts. But outside the tribe, there are many more powerful beasts out there, and only strong tattooed warriors can face the beasts, even though they are few in number. They are the core of the tribe. How strong a kingdom is depends entirely on the number of tattooed warriors. Because of that, the status of a wizard is so high. But the skills of a wizard are not limited only to training warriors, but also to creating a wizard domain, and ending this long. The old man handed the protagonist the scroll containing all his knowledge, and upon opening the scroll, the protagonist saw unfamiliar words, but suddenly the letters began to glow, making his head spin. This also happens to me when I'm reading a manga, and suddenly a big chunk of explanation appears out of nowhere. At the same time, the wizard said that the text of the mages is not something he can read now, but when the succession ceremony is over, he will be able to understand its content, and within each of these dominoes is engraved a spell. Provided that he uses magical power, he will be able to activate it. In short, finally the time has come for the protagonist to start becoming overpowered. Of course, there are many types of magic, like poison techniques, healing spells, and blessing spells that can increase strength and speed. The elder also said that he specialized in healing magic, and also in some other blessings. And one thing the protagonist must remember is that a wizard can never reveal his cards to the public, because although a wizard is greatly admired, he also becomes an easy target. The old man also told the protagonist to keep the scroll a secret, as it is the tribe's inheritance, And upon finishing saying this, the elder began to spit blood out of nowhere, and desperate, the protagonist tried to use his magic to heal the old man. But his technique was inefficient, and he couldn't heal the elder. As the wizard approached his death, he felt no fear, as his wait had not been in vain, and seeing his successor trying everything to heal his body, the great sage asked the protagonist not to waste his energy on him, as his body had reached a level that could no longer be healed. At the same time, he said that his greatest regret in life was not being able to see the surprises his successor will create in the future. But before leaving this world, he decided to use his last seconds to finish the inheritance ceremony, thus using the last of his strength. The elder walked among his people with majesty and initiated the succession ceremony. Thus, after waiting for this moment for 63 years, this day finally came, and even close to death, he feels proud to name the new wizard who will lead his tribe to the top of the world. And with the beginning of the ceremony, the strongest warriors of the tribe offered their blood as requested by the elder. At the same time, all blood flew towards the wizard and became a sphere of blood. And with that, the totem was complete, and the sphere of blood became a golden dragon and entered the body of the young king. And to complete the ceremony, the elder passed the true inheritance of the wizards to the protagonist, and within this sphere of light contains the history of the wizards and the secrets of the tattoos. So when the sphere entered the protagonist's head, his soul was transferred to a strange space, at the same time showing the memory of a boy walking through the desert with his tribe for 2 days without eating anything. Then, as it got dark, the boy used his tribe's artifact and asked the gods of the totem to show him the future of his race. And to make such a request, he used many divination potions and ended up breaking his people's taboo. Because of that, the most qualified heir of the witch would not be able to live much, but even being able to die for having done that, the boy does not regret it, since he saw something incredible. And seeing his son in this state, the witch used her energy to heal him. At the same time, she gave advice to her little boy, saying that this vision is his secret, but he cannot be at the mercy of the prediction. Instead, he must bury this vision within his heart and remember it until the day of the prediction arrives. And even she, not knowing what is the future of her tribe, she believes that one day her race will no longer need to suffer hunger and cold. But until that day comes, they will have to be strong to go through all the trials. And as her son is her heir, he will have to be even stronger to guide his people. And hearing this, the boy decided to become the leader until the arrival of the legendary king who will lead his tribe out of poverty. So a few years later, it shows the extras unhappy with the boy who became the new wizard, since he was arrogant and had a very weak body to become the strongest tattooed warrior of his tribe. But it didn't take long for him to earn the admiration of his people. Several years later, in a certain attack by a pack of monsters, he used all his power to seriously injure the beasts and save his people. But on that fateful day, his precious son ended up dying while fighting the beasts. And it was also on that day that the wizard began to wonder if his vision of the great king was correct, since even after so many years, the savior of his race had not yet arrived. But even so, he continued to believe until old age, and taking advantage of the fact that he was no longer in his prime, the Black Snake race attacked his village. But proving that he deserved the title of the strongest wizard of his tribe's generation, the elder managed to save his people and retreated to a new territory. And even though he was no longer in his prime, the reason he remained standing until now was that he could not fall, since the great king had not yet appeared. So sometime later, at the moment he saw the protagonist, the wizard realized that his king had finally arrived, and all his waiting was worth it. And after seeing this memory, the protagonist's soul returned to reality, and he apologized for making the elder wait for so long. But the old man did not blame him, and handed the future of his tribe into the hands of the person who will lead his people out of poverty. And finishing his life's mission, the elder finally managed to rest, and went to where his mother, his son, and his wife were. And with the death of a great leader, came the birth of the legendary king, who will lead his kingdom to the top of the world. Then it shows the protagonist waking up in his tent, right after passing out, for having run out of energy after finishing receiving the inheritance from the elder, and feeling this great power coursing through his body. The protagonist explained that the totem is a kind of script of the wizards, which evolves along with the user, and the inheritance ceremony is the main secret of a wizard. And after receiving his inheritance, his vision improved a lot. Now he can see things more clearly, unlike before when he saw things kind of blurry. And as a bonus, his body also seems to have gained inexhaustible strength, dude. So that means Spider-Man also received the inheritance of the spider. Since he also felt all these things, then opening the property's window, he saw that his resistance, strength, and speed had doubled, and his spirit had also increased tenfold. And as a bonus, his magic power had also increased a little. And because of all these changes, he began to feel like Spider-Man after being bitten. It's obvious to any sedentary person who spends the whole day sitting in front of the PC, and their only exercise is using their hand to massage the doll. A small increase in resistance for him is something grandiose. The protagonist also explains that according to the system, the value of magic power and spirit is the same. Simplifying magical energy is the evolution of spiritual power. Then when the protagonist went to do the daily check-in, the system detected that the user had some unclaimed support packages, and seeing this message, he claimed all the bonus packages. And with that, he received a fruit knife and also a linen textile craft. And while he was disappointed, he realized that the random help package really gives you random things. This way he wouldn't even be surprised if one day he received toilet paper. Dude, I don't know why he's complaining. In a primitive world, toilet paper is rarer than gold to me. Even the linen textile craft seems to be very useful, since most people in the primitive tribe use animal skins. Of course, the protagonist also realized this, and decided to make a sackcloth in the future. And while he was thinking about it, his father-in-law appeared and said that he needs to pack his bags, as he's going to live in the main tent now. Seeing his new leader feeling uncomfortable about taking over the former leader's house, the father-in-law said that from now on he's the wizard of their tribe, so it's natural for him to live in the main tent, because that way it will be easier for his people to receive guidance from him. Hearing this, the protagonist ended up agreeing to live there, and asked what they did with the old leader's body. And before the father-in-law could answer, the warrior lion appeared and said they followed the old man's counsel and cremated his body, and this relic was the only thing left after the cremation. There's a legend that says a person of infinite merits in life will have relics after their cremation. Man, the old man is so awesome that even the gods recognized him, and accepting this relic, the king of the primitive tribe decided to build a temple after reclaiming his people's ancestral land, and this is his first major goal after becoming the tribe's wizard. So as he sat on his throne, which is currently just a rug on the ground, the protagonist asked his servants about the situation of his people, and the warrior lion replied that there isn't much meat left, just enough to share with the tattooed warriors, but not enough to supply the consumption of the 6 reserve soldiers. Man, I still can't understand the status classification of the warriors in this tribe. Like, is it like a football team where there are starting players and also reserves? At the same time, the father-in-law explains that originally there were 26 reserve warriors, but many of them were taken by the tattooed warriors of the Black Cobra tribe during the migration. And currently there's a good chance they're dead or have become slaves. And as the king needed a clearer understanding of the Black Cobra threat, he asked if the lizard race was far from them. And the father-in-law said the Black Cobra race won't come to their territory for now, since this land is a bit barren and they don't like that. And although the fact that there aren't many beasts in the hunting grounds makes the citizens feel safe, it makes hunting very difficult since it takes a day to travel and find prey, and it takes at least 3 days to get enough meat. So this condition, while good in some ways, is also bad, since the bad location of this tribe makes it difficult to obtain food. But it also means they won't be attacked by monsters, so they'll be able to develop their territory more calmly. Of course, for the protagonist, it's not a good idea to rely only on hunting to survive. Because of that, he decided to use good resources as currency in the bazaar instead of meat. Guys, is it just me, or has it been 2 chapters since the waifu of this work appeared? I hope she shows up in the next chapter, otherwise I'll have to pay a visit to the author's house. And while thinking about what to use as currency, the protagonist remembered the flax he received, and asked his servants if flax was something rare. And Lion replied that it's very rare. Only big tribes can make it. Because of that, his desire since childhood was to keep some linen clothes and pass them on to the younger generation. The father-in-law also said they want to make clothes for everyone in the tribe, but after the migration, they didn't get much meat to use as currency. And every time the flax is sold quickly at the market of the spotted deer, and to buy the roll of this thread that goes from where the king is sitting to the door, they needed to give 300 pounds of meat as currency. Upon hearing this, the protagonist realized that this was a terrible monopoly for those who sell the meat. Because of that, he set a small goal, which was to use the flax to make everyone in the tribe have plenty of meat to eat as much as they can. After devising a method to create flax, the protagonist created a plan with his father-in-law and General Lion to get meat for everyone. Then a furry is shown, complaining for looking for grams instead of hunting prey. Unlike this extra where I live, the guys love a green leaf. And seeing his subordinate slacking off, General Lion gave him a smack and said what they were doing was related to the future of their tribe. As he finished saying this, he had a flashback where the wizard said he knew the technique to create linen, but had to be careful not to let any outsider find out, or else their tribe would become a target for various different races. Because of this, The wizard gave General Lion the mission to find a certain plant when hunting, and this plant was the material needed to make linen fabric. So, depending on his effort, his tribe would have enough food for everyone. Since the wizard entrusted this important task to him, General Lion decided to do his best. At the same time, it shows the protagonist worried that there was only enough dried meat for 15 days, and to make matters worse, there were only 8 days left until the market of the leopard deer tribe, and they had nothing to trade for the meat, and traveling to the leopard deer tribe would take 3 days, so there were only 5 days left to prepare the ingredients. With time being so short, there was a great chance that his father-in-law and General Lion wouldn't be able to find the plant. But even if they found it, the protagonist didn't know if he should personally teach everyone how to make linen, since the method of linen production is secret, so he couldn't give it all away so easily. However, if he had a suitable assistant, he could teach her a complete set of steps, and then have her teach others in stages. But if the material wasn't found, he would have to think of a backup plan. To make matters worse, there were still many problems in this tribe, like clean water, salt, and sanitation being major issues. Just thinking about it was making him stressed, since he was just a common novelist who couldn't even take care of himself, let alone manage a village with several people. And while he was depressed about his future, the waifu of the story finally appeared after 2 chapters and became worried about him, since he was acting crazy while pulling his hair, man. Now he couldn't even pull the bald puppy trick as people would think he was unwell. And to see if he had a fever, Yanhua pressed her forehead against his. But contrary to what she thought, his temperature was normal. Disappointing everyone, the protagonist became all shy and backed away from her like a virgin. At the same time, the girl said that since her father and the others were all out doing something, she was outside the tent keeping watch and protecting his safety. But upon hearing the protagonist say she wasn't trustworthy, she got angry and gave him a kill lion move, saying she was the strongest among the reserve soldiers. In this situation, the protagonist felt really good being so close to her, but at the same time, he also felt like he could die at any moment. So not wanting to lose his life so young again without being able to enjoy the world, he apologized to her. And after managing to breathe again, he asked if all the wizards dealt with so many trivial things, and Yanhua said no, as all the wizards had assistants. But since the previous wizard's assistants died while fighting the Black Snake tribe, there were none left to help the new wizard. And since the protagonist didn't want to continue doing these miscellaneous tasks alone, he asked if Yanhua had anyone to recommend to him as his assistant. And it would be good if that someone was intelligent and hardworking, with practical thoughts and ideas. Hearing this, Yanhua smiled and said that person was right in front of him. Of course, she was referring to herself, but the protagonist destroyed all her confidence, telling her to stop playing around, as she wasn't even close to those 3 conditions. And irritated, she told him to choose a Miko instead of an assistant, since a Miko was a woman who took care of the wizard's daily life, doing household chores and giving instructions and various other things. And for this world, a Miko was like the wizard's wife. But of course, Yanhua didn't tell this part to the protag. So when asked who would be suitable for this position, Yanhua said with a discouraged expression that she has someone in mind, thus showing another flashback, where her father said that the new wizard would need a Miko sooner or later. As he was close to her, she would be perfect for this position. But seeing her daughter indecisive, he asked if there was anything she hated about the new wizard, since this was a very valuable opportunity, so she should get it. And Yanhua replied that she does not hate the protagonist, and also becoming a Miko is every girl's dream in the tribe. But there is no way she can take revenge if she became a Miko, so no matter what happens, she will continue to be a tattoo warrior and kill the bastards of the Black Snake tribe. And as she remembered that, she ended up coming back to reality with the protagonist calling her name, and took the new wizard to see her friend. And arriving there, the protagonist saw 3 ladies working, and as Yanhua had said that her friend had pink hair with a fox ear and tail, he could easily differentiate who would be his future Miko. So to the joy of many, and to the sadness of those who do not like harem, another girl with animal ears appeared to enter the king's harem.